This was the world of Frank Peralez. For years, he had been a police officer, a man sworn to uphold the law, to protect the innocent, and to serve his community. He was someone who, by all outward appearances, lived a normal, respectable life. Perhaps he was retired, enjoying a quiet life after years on the force, or maybe he had moved into another field, still carrying the aura of his former profession. He was seen as a family man with a wife and children, seemingly living the American dream. His public persona was one of trustworthiness, authority, and stability, qualities you'd expect from someone who once wore a badge. His family, his wife and children, were, by all accounts, living ordinary lives, connected to their community, likely involved in schools or local activities. They were just like any other family in any other quiet neighborhood, entirely unaware of the profound darkness that was, perhaps, festering beneath the surface of their seemingly normal patriarch. While there might have been subtle, almost imperceptible cracks in Frank Peralez's facade, perhaps the stress of recent retirement, quiet financial worries, or an uncharacteristic moodiness noted by a few but dismissed as typical life pressures, nothing truly hinted at the monstrous acts he would soon commit. These were details that, in hindsight, would be scrutinized, but at the time they were too fleeting, too minor to raise any significant alarms. Frank Peralez was to the world a man of law, a former protector, a seemingly ordinary and dependable individual. This carefully constructed image made the impending revelation of his horrific crimes all the more shocking, all the more terrifying, and profoundly strange, dark, and mysterious. The stage was set for an unthinkable act by someone who was supposed to be a symbol of safety, turning a quiet California community into a scene of unimaginable horror. The quiet suburban calm of the California community was shattered on that terrifying night, forever erasing the illusion of safety that had once enveloped Frank Peralez's home. The exact sequence of events remains shrouded in the chilling silence of the dead, but what authorities discovered painted a picture of unimaginable violence. The horrors of the night likely unfolded sometime in the late hours, away from the prying eyes and ears of neighbors. The discovery of the crime was abrupt and horrific. Perhaps it was a concerned relative unable to reach the family, or a neighbor who noticed something amiss, prompting a welfare check. When first responders arrived at the Peralez residence, they were met with a scene that even seasoned officers, hardened by years of confronting human depravity, would find deeply disturbing. Inside the home, the unspeakable became reality. Frank Peralez had brutally murdered his wife and children. The details of the crime scene suggested extreme personal violence. This wasn't a robbery gone wrong. This was a deliberate, targeted act against his own family, committed within the very walls that should have been their sanctuary. The shock for the responding officers, realizing they were standing in the aftermath of a family massacre orchestrated by one of their own, would have been profound. But the horror didn't end there. Further investigation, either within the home or nearby, led to the discovery of a third victim. Another woman, unrelated to the Peralez family, also found deceased. Her connection to the scene, or to Frank Peralez himself, was an immediate, chilling mystery. Was she an unfortunate bystander? A hidden, separate target? Her presence added another layer of complexity and profound fear to an already incomprehensible act of violence. The community was plunged into immediate, agonizing panic, with multiple innocent lives brutally taken, and the chilling realization that a dangerous killer was on the loose, a killer who had once served as a protector. A frantic manhunt was immediately launched. All resources converged on the primary, undeniable suspect, Frank Peralez, the former officer, now the ultimate threat. The quiet streets filled with the wail of sirens, the urgent chatter of police radios, and the palpable fear of residents locking their doors, terrified that the monster was still out there, ready to strike again. The night of horror had descended, leaving behind a trail of unthinkable violence and the chilling realization that a man once sworn to uphold the law had become its most terrifying transgressor. The immediate threat was still active, and the community held its breath, waiting for the inevitable, terrifying conclusion. As the horrifying details of the Peralez family murders and the additional victim came to light, the California community reeled. The idea that a former officer of the law, a man once sworn to protect, was now the perpetrator of such unthinkable violence, sent a wave of shock and disbelief far beyond the quiet suburban streets. The manhunt for Frank Peralez intensified, transforming from a desperate search for a missing person into a full-scale, urgent pursuit of a mass murderer. Law enforcement agencies poured resources into tracking him, fully aware that a dangerous, unpredictable individual was at large. Every passing hour heightened the fear that he might strike again. The search culminated just hours after the gruesome discovery. Peralez was ultimately located in a remote area, perhaps in his vehicle, or a secluded spot he knew well. The exact details of the confrontation remain a somber point of police record. As authorities closed in, the chilling truth of his final act became apparent. Before he could be apprehended, before he could be questioned, before he could ever be forced to answer for the atrocities he had committed, Frank Peralez took his own life. His suicide brought a grim, definitive end to the immediate threat. The community could breathe a collective sigh of relief, knowing that the monster was no longer lurking in their midst. But this immediate relief was quickly overshadowed by overwhelming despair and profound confusion. The man who had committed such unspeakable acts, who held the terrifying answers to why, had silenced himself forever. He had robbed the victims' families, his former colleagues, and the bewildered public of any chance at true understanding or direct closure. The disbelief among those who knew him was palpable. How could the man they knew, the officer, the neighbor, the family man, unleash such a monstrous evil? The news of his suicide, following the revelation of his crimes, only compounded the horror. It left a void, a chilling, unsolved mystery of motive that would haunt the case indefinitely. The physical threat was neutralized, but the psychological torment for everyone touched by this tragedy, along with the agonizing questions, had only just begun. The officer's shadow, now forever stained with unimaginable acts, had retreated, but its darkness lingered. With Frank Peralez no longer alive to answer for his crimes, the focus of the investigation shifted from apprehension to understanding. Police and psychological profilers embarked on a painstaking deep dive into his life, hoping to uncover the motive, the psychological triggers, or any hidden darkness that could possibly explain the unthinkable violence he unleashed. It became a grim autopsy of a life, searching for cracks in the facade of the seemingly normal man. Detectives interviewed everyone, his grieving family members, those still able to speak, former colleagues from the police force, old friends, and even distant acquaintances. They meticulously reviewed his personal and financial records, searched his digital footprint, and pieced together his activities leading up to the murders. They were looking for anomalies, for red flags that in hindsight might have screamed a warning. Several potential, yet speculative, motives began to emerge, each as chilling as the last. Mental health decline. Was Frank Peralez suffering from an undiagnosed or rapidly deteriorating mental health condition? Untreated severe depression, a sudden onset of psychosis, or a developing personality disorder could have warped his perception of reality and driven him to such extreme violence. The stress of retirement, a significant life change, can often trigger such crises. Overwhelming personal stressors. Were there hidden pressures that pushed him to the breaking point? Perhaps severe financial ruin, a crumbling marriage he desperately tried to conceal, or other overwhelming personal crises that were meticulously hidden from the public eye. The facade of normalcy might have been a desperate attempt to maintain control as his world imploded. A hidden darkness. The most unsettling thought was the possibility that Peralez possessed a darker, more sinister core personality that he had expertly concealed behind his badge and his public image. Could he have harbored narcissistic or even psychopathic tendencies, traits that enabled him to commit such atrocities without remorse, only to be fully revealed in his final, horrific act? Adding another layer of profound confusion was the third victim, the woman seemingly unrelated to his family. Investigators worked tirelessly to establish her connection to Peralez. Was she a random target, a witness he couldn't leave alive? Or was there a brief, unknown interaction, a fleeting encounter that tragically placed her in his path? Her inclusion in the murder spree made the overall motive even more strange, dark, and mysterious. suggesting a chaotic, unpredictable descent into violence rather than a singularly focused attack. The Frank Peralez case became a chilling reminder that some monsters don't lurk in the shadows, but walk among us, even wearing the uniform of trust. Their horrific secrets are expertly concealed behind a facade of normalcy, only to be unveiled in a terrifying explosion of violence. The investigation, for all its thoroughness, struggled to find the definitive why, leaving a permanent void in the understanding of this unthinkable crime. Frank Peralez's final, desperate act brought an end to his reign of terror, but it left behind a profound void that could never truly be filled. The lives tragically cut short, his wife, his children, and the unrelated woman, became more than just statistics. They became the silent, haunting figures at the heart of an incomprehensible tragedy. Their stories and the brutal way they ended now serve as a chilling cautionary tale, a stark reminder of the unpredictable darkness that can erupt without warning. The ripple effect of Peralez's actions extended far beyond the immediate victims. For his former colleagues in law enforcement, the incident was a devastating blow. The betrayal of trust, the profound realization that one of their own could commit such atrocities, created an internal crisis. It forced a painful introspection within the police force and undeniably damaged the public's perception of those sworn to protect them. The badge, a symbol of safety and authority, was now for some tainted by the shadow of Frank Peralez. The suburban California community, once perceived as safe and tranquil, was left with an indelible scar. The illusion of safety was shattered, replaced by a lingering sense of unease. How do you move on when a protector becomes a monster? The healing process for such a deep wound is agonizingly slow, marked by collective grief, lingering fear, and the difficulty of processing an event that defies all logic. The once quiet streets now hold a different resonance, forever linked to the horrific events that unfolded there. And at the heart of it all remains the central, persistent, and agonizing question: why did he do it? Frank Peralez took his secrets with him. His suicide, while preventing further bloodshed, tragically ensured that the definitive motive, the true catalyst behind his unthinkable rampage, would forever remain elusive. This case is a chilling, unsolved mystery of the human psyche, a dark testament to the hidden complexities and the terrifying capacity for violence that can reside within seemingly ordinary individuals. The case of Frank Peralez serves as a haunting, creepy reminder that evil doesn't always wear a monstrous face or lurk in the obvious shadows. Sometimes it hides in plain sight, behind a smile, behind a badge, within a seemingly normal life. And when that facade crumbles, the ensuing horror is all the more terrifying because it was utterly unthinkable, leaving a permanent shadow over all who witnessed its chilling reality.